is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and Andy Kostka live on a Friday in August. We are going to talk about the arrival of Orioles infield prospect Coby Mayo. We're also going to talk about the move that precipitated it. That would be Jordan Westburg's unfortunate injury. Also talk about Trevor Rogers' first start with the Orioles and a couple more notes about that trade deadline. Andy, you were up late last night working on that news of Coby Mayo getting the call up. Are you sleep deprived as of today? You're not in Cleveland. Fortunately, you're still in Maryland. But how you feeling today after what has been, I don't know, one of the craziest weeks in Orioles history, at least in recent Orioles history?
Yeah, it's been quite a whirlwind of reporting and news. Coby Mayo is just the latest on top of that. No, feel fine. In fact, my dog was so sacked out in the sleep last night that she didn't notice the deer that came up onto the back patio and ate half the plants there. So both of us apparently got a good night's sleep if we didn't notice that.
Yeah, letting the guard down. Wow, that's brutal. That's tough. That's okay. We forgive her. All right, let's talk about what has happened recently, because the Orioles are coming off game 1 of their 3-game series with the Cleveland Guardians that they lost 10-3 last night. But a worse loss happened in a win 2 days ago. That would be Jordan Westburg going down with a hand injury, a broken hand, gets hit in the hand by that pitch, ends up running the bases, but is pulled for Ramon Arias. And it turns out he suffered a fracture in that hand in the win over the Blue Jays. Brandon Hyde said they hope to have him back before the end of the season. I will say Jordan Westburg, his production had been dropping slightly since he started the season on fire. 880 OPS in March and April, then down every month since, and it was in 744 in July. But this guy's an all-star. He was playing every day for the Orioles. He could play third base. He could play second base. He was even used at shortstop at one point. It's hard to overstate just how big a loss this is, losing Jordan Westburg.
Yeah, it's a huge loss. I mean, this is a guy that has taken that next step as a second-year pro at this point. His power, we saw it so frequently in the minor leagues. We saw it at Mississippi State. Last year, it didn't really transfer to the major leagues, but hey, that is a part of a learning curve. This year, he's had no problem with power. In fact, he's been incredibly impressive. 18 homers, 25 doubles, leads the team. So, yeah, this is a guy that can swing for extra bases. Having him out is a gigantic loss. And you mentioned it offensively, but as you said too, defensively, he was very, very good. We'll see what happens when he does come back, and if and when he comes back. Obviously, he'll come back at some point. But if it's
this year, yeah,
because fractured hand. I mean, that he's going to have to grip a bat. Bat vibrates a lot in October when the weather gets colder. He is going to not have swung a bat for a month or more at that point. So is he in playoff shape, for the playoffs? That's going to be, it's a huge loss. It's going to be something to watch, but it's a huge loss.
It also makes me wonder, and we'll talk about Coby Mayo coming up, and that's, Westburg's injury is obviously a large reason why Coby Mayo is joining the team right now in Cleveland. But you do wonder if this Jordan Westburg injury happened 2 days before it did, if this happened right before the deadline, would Mike Elias still have traded Connor Norby in that deal that netted them Trevor Rogers to the Miami Marlins? Because you can imagine Connor Norby would be playing more frequently, would at least have a better opportunity here in Baltimore if Jordan Westburg was going to be out.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I still think in the long run, Baltimore saw the future of this infield being, Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westburg, Jackson Holliday, Coby Mayo. Am I forgetting somebody on the list? I don't think so. Connor Norby, maybe didn't have as clear of a path to everyday playing time in the future. And he has the pedigree and the quality to be a major league regular elsewhere, and he's going to get that chance. Right now he's in AAA. for the Marlins as he learns third base, which is an interesting decision from Miami. But he should be up, at some point soon, and he should have a pretty good career, as things develop. I still think they would have traded Connor Norby because you feel like, hey, you had Jackson Holiday you can bring up, you have Coby Mayo now you can bring up. These are your centerpieces for the future of this infield. So I don't know if it necessarily changes that much on the trade front, but definitely tricky timing. Tough timing to lose Jordan Westburg, right? As you also lose Connor Norby for different reasons. So
yeah,
it's going to be a lot on Jackson Holiday to play every day at second base, and it's going to be a lot immediately on Coby Mayo to play pretty much every day third base, or maybe splitting it with Ramon Arias, however that will look. Maybe a little first base in there, DH, whatever it is. It's going to be a challenge because these are young guys that are expected to produce immediately, and we've seen it so many times, and it's expected that a young guy will come up and he will not be the best version of himself immediately. This is the major leagues. You have to adjust. Look at Colton Cowser, who is, a rookie of the year candidate who has gone kind of up and down at different points. Now he's, up again, but it's part of the adjustment period of, pitchers are going to adapt back to you. So tough timing for this Westburg injury. Coby probably could have gotten his feet wet months ago. Still believe that. But hey, he's up now, and we'll see what he does.
Yeah, he's been major league ready for a while now. He's been hitting .301 with 20 homers and a .961 OPS in 77 AAA games this year. Mashing the ball at 22 years old, former fourth-round pick out of high school in Florida, who signed an overslot deal. He broke his ribs back in May after a collision where he was trying to catch a foul pop-up in the dugout. Came back a month later and picked up where he left off. We heard Mike Elias say on the Norfolk Tides broadcast, we're just trying to find a way to work this guy in because he's been that good. And now after you have the injury to Jorge Mateo, which is going to keep him out for a while, that's another big blow. And now the injury to Jordan Westburg, it finally opened the door for Coby Mayo. How much do you imagine he is going to play? Because he still has defensive concerns at both third base and first base. He's been used at both those spots in AAA Norfolk. 10 errors at third, 6 errors at first. They have Ryan Mountcastle entrenched at first base. You imagine it's going to be the majority of his playing time is going to come at third base, but I could see him, and tell me if you agree, Andy, playing just about every day, just like Jackson Holiday probably will.
Yeah, there's no other point to call him up if you're not going to play him every day.
Right.
I expect him to play very frequently. Sure. I mean, yeah, the defensive people love talking about the defense for Coby Mayo. I haven't watched him every single game in AAA. I watched him every game in spring training, and what I saw at spring training was tremendous improvement at third base. He played shortstop in high school. He is quick. He looks big and burly, but I'm telling you, he's very athletic as well. The guy's could be a tight end. So this I do think he will fit in fine, and as he gets older, the defensive fielding will be a thing of the past. He might not be a Manny Machado at third base. Might not be a Ramon Arias of 2022, which right now we're not seeing the Ramon Arias of 2022 defensively. But you think about it, most of the things with Coby was kind of finding a new arm slot. When he was throwing straight over the top, really this arm angle, when he was throwing from here, the ball could sail on him a little bit more. In spring training, sorry, I'm gonna try to have this. So they wanted him more of like a 3/4 or even a sidearm. They wanted to drop it, the arm slot, so that especially when he would field it and then throw it a second, he was throwing it sidearm like that instead of going over the top, because it had a tendency to sail on him a little bit. You're learning a new arm slot as a 22-year-old, also mashing the ball, and it's going to be a little bit. He might have a throwing error every once in a while, maybe a defensive gaffe, but it's not like Ramon Arias has been perfect.
Yeah.
It's not like Gunnar Henderson has been perfect. I mean, geez, the guy has 15 errors this year, or maybe a little bit more than that. But like, so stuff happens, and I do think that Coby's future and offensive upside more than makes up for any defensive lapse.
No question. His bat is just that good. He is just toolsy enough. He has the ability to hit for contact, to hit for power. His bat is one of the best in minor league baseball this year. And this is one of the last big, massive franchise-altering debuts I think that we're going to see, because we saw Adley Rutschman 2 years ago. We saw Gunnar Henderson come up. Those felt like big moments, and they were. Grayson Rodriguez making his debut in Texas, another big one. You still have Samuel Basayo down in the minors. Jackson Holliday already made his debut this year. The Orioles are not going to be picking 1-2. I know Coby Mayo is not a high first-round pick. He's not even a first-round pick. But you may not have highly touted prospects, top 15 prospects in Major League Baseball coming through your system as frequently as you have in recent years. This is so thrilling, I think, for Orioles fans, because this is what you envision. I mean, it's a shame it came at the expense of Jordan Westburg, who the Orioles, I still think, very much view him as a long-term franchise corner piece for this team going forward. But you're looking right now at Coby Mayo, who's 22 at third base, Gunnar Henderson at shortstop, who's 23, Jackson Holliday, who's 20 years old at second base. Then you've got Westburg, who just is 25 years old and hopefully will come back at the end of this year. Mountcastle is a veteran. He's only 27. This is a young, exciting infield that they have built right now. And all of these guys are under team control through at least 2026. And if you take out Mountcastle, they're under control for much longer than that. This is the kind of infield that the Orioles want to be rolling out here almost every night for the next 5 years. This is it.
And Adley Rutschman's 26.
Yeah.
So you go around the horn, and holy fright, they're above the legal drinking age, but not by too much. So it's an incredibly interesting, young gun team. I imagine that this is not how Baltimore expected or maybe wanted Jackson and Coby to come back. Big injuries to Jorge Mateo and Jordan Westburg. But this is why you have a depth in the minor league system. You have it so that should an injury occur, you're going to be completely set. You're going to be ready to call up the next guy. We've seen it with this is a little bit off topic, but just thinking here that last year they had such phenomenal injury luck. And what I mean by that is that they didn't have many injuries until Felix Bautista in September, with the elbow injury that really had huge implications for the playoffs. This year has been a completely different animal with losing 3 starting pitchers to season-ending surgeries. You have Danny Coulombe, who is expected to return in sometime in September, but losing him was huge for this bullpen. Now Mateo and Westburg. So it's not the same luck as last year, but the great thing about this organization is that there is depth. And while he's not necessarily proven at this level, there's nothing left for Mayo to prove in AAA. He's past due to arrive in the majors, and so here he is. And you don't ever want to add too much pressure on a guy, but he could have a very big role in what this team does these last 2 months. And I remember we had a preseason roundtable, the banner, and one of the questions we answered was like, which debutant or which rookie is going to have the most impact on this team this season? And I said Coby Mayo. I think John Mioli said Colton Cowser, which is probably the correct answer, just given the season as a whole. Colton Cowser has managed, in his rookie year, just longer timeline, and he's been phenomenal. I do think that Coby has that kind of potential, that he's arriving in August. He has 2 months now as this team pushes to solidify itself in the AL East, to win a second straight division title, to do better in the postseason this year. He could be a major piece of that. It's not going to be fun for him hitting with that left field behemoth of a wall at Camden Yards, but he is not a purely pull hitter. He is a very good hitter. People love talking about the power. Yeah, he has so much power. We know that. But it's not like he's sacrificing OBP just for slugging percentage. This is a guy that is a very well-rounded player. I expect it to have, a learning curve. There will be down moments because he's a 22-year-old adapting to the major leagues, but luckily he has a 2-month runway before the postseason arrives. So.
Exactly. And you just hope that he can get ready and get himself to being a productive big leaguer in that stretch. He actually, interestingly enough, has better splits against right-handed pitchers this year in AAA than he does against lefties. OPS over 1,000 against righties this year in AAA, and an OPS under 800 against lefties. I don't think the Orioles should read too much. I don't think they will read too much into minor league splits. That's kind of, a case-by-case basis. And the Orioles tend to not buy into reverse splits anyway. Ramon Arias is a reverse splits guy, and the Orioles still throw him out there typically against lefties. But it is interesting that it does have reverse splits, and I wonder how that'll affect how much he plays against lefties as opposed to righties.
Yeah, I think maybe part of that too is there are so many fewer left-handed pitchers in AAA, and oftentimes they're just not as good because if you're a halfway decent lefty, you're probably in the majors, which is to take nothing away from lefties in the minors. There's many good ones too. Just maybe, fewer lefties who are kind of game-changing lefties, like you're going to see up here. That said, he might just not have seen them as frequently as he has seen righties. So he's just more used to seeing righties, and as a result, is better hitting against them. So we'll see as time goes on in the majors what those splits look like. But yeah, I don't think it's a concern.
No, and if anything, it gives you more confidence that he's going to be able to hit righties. That is the biggest takeaway for me, because he's still going to be in the lineup against lefties, and you hope he produces there, but they're going to face more righties than they are lefties. And it gives you confidence that, yeah, he's not going to have an issue against right-handed pitchers. It is difficult because the Orioles did just acquire a right-handed hitting DH in Eloy Jimenez, who is pretty much exclusively going to be used as a DH. Mike Elias indicated that. He only has one game so far this season with the White Sox in the outfield, so he's going to be your DH. And for Coby Mayo, who has defensive concerns, it does give you a little bit of pause, and that's an obstacle to putting Coby Mayo as your designated hitter because you have Eloy Jimenez there. And that kind of, makes me wonder exactly what the Orioles are doing by carrying both Eloy Jimenez right now and Austin Slater. We don't yet know the corresponding move for Coby Mayo. Could be Livan Soto, who is with the team, just joined the team at the trade deadline and was up there in Cleveland yesterday. He would seem to be a logical fit. But you guys got these guys, and the Orioles do this every year, especially at the trade deadline, where they have these guys who are just so obviously placeholders. I think of Jesus Aguilar, who they signed a couple years ago with 1 month remaining in the regular season. He was a below average player. He had gotten released earlier that year, and the Orioles thought they saw something in him, and he didn't produce for them in the 1 month that he was there. Earlier this year, Tony Kemp was such an obvious placeholder that kept Jackson Holliday off the big league roster to start the season. He did not record a hit with the Orioles. Christian Pache was already DFA'd. He was kind of a throw-in in the Austin Hayes trade. Now, at this point, you've got Austin Slater in that category, and Eloy Jimenez is a more highly priced version of that. But it's just kind of frustrating, I think, for Orioles fans, because you see these guys on the big league roster that are not going to be here long-term. And occasionally they turn into guys like Aaron Hicks. I thought Aaron Hicks was nothing but a pure placeholder when the Orioles signed him back in May of last year because Kyle Stowers was hurt and Cedric Mullins was hurt. So they were just, I thought, keeping that spot warm for Kyle Stowers, who had an injury-riddled 2023. Aaron Hicks went on to have a good season for the Orioles. So occasionally you do get that kind of season from these placeholders, but we have to come up with some title for this. The Tony Kemp Award. I mean, what do we call this spot that is so obviously reserved for players who are not going to be around long and are blocking prospects?
It is it's funny. I remember we asked Mike Elias one time about this, and the answer was, something along the lines of, what you're getting when you're getting a major league veteran, but you don't necessarily know what you're getting when a prospect is coming up, which
Sure.
is true. You do know, but at that same token, you know what you're getting in Austin Slater,
Yeah,
which is
and it's not good. Like
it's a 185 hitter. He's
right.
a very nice guy, um, but he's not necessarily a game changer. Heston Kjerstad um, has not had highlight reel moments in the outfield, which potentially plays part role in this. Since he had a concussion when he was hit by a pitch in a scary location. Also, way too many hit by pitches this year.
This year, yeah.
Yeah,
James
Danielle
McCann talked
has,
about it
yeah,
with
Danielle
Danielle
has
Allentuck.
spoken about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, just something needs to be done there. Side note.
yeah,
But Heston hadn't really found his rhythm since the concussion, so maybe there's something there that you just feel like, hey, give him some time to reset, and then we'll make a move to bring you back for later in the second half. That's possible. It's just it is interesting that they went out and got Eloy Jimenez, who basically cannot play in the outfield at all at this point. He's been banged up all year. I mean, Brandon Hyde mentioned last night in Cleveland that he's been banged up all year, and this is a guy you went out and got. Yeah, it wasn't expensive. You gave up, Trey Mago,
Mago.
who is a lower end prospect. So you weren't dealing, a super highly ranked guy. And the Chicago White Sox sent money in return, along with Eloy Jimenez. So it's pretty low risk, but it does make you wonder, what the fascination with guys that are on the fringes of the major
Yeah,
leagues that are veterans, and they love to have them around. Um,
it's the "they can fix him"
yeah,
award.
yeah,
It's kind of frustrating.
yeah, yeah. I can't say that much on the record here, but it's somewhat interesting that
Yeah,
it continually has there's always a roster spot for guys that maybe haven't, and I've been proven wrong
right.
before. So it's not, obviously the advanced scouts in Baltimore are great. The pro scouting system, the way they got Albert Suarez from Korea when he was released from a Korean team because of a calf injury, came over in a minor league deal to Baltimore at the end of last season, and now he's been just a huge piece in this pitching staff. I mean, did I expect that? No.
No. Yeah, they see these guys under the radar that we don't.
Yeah.
It's
So
absolutely worth acknowledgement.
yeah, so I don't want to blanket statement say that this is, um, foolish or something like that. I mean, obviously, there's so much that goes into identifying talent like this, but just at face value, um, it can be somewhat difficult at times to see, um, when you acquire guys of this, slumping, perhaps, of this nature. Again, Slater 185 before the trade.
Right.
Um, I believe Eloy Jimenez was hitting 304 against lefties, which is great. Against righties was 240. He's pretty much a platoon guy at this point.
Yeah.
Um, you wonder how much are they really bringing to this lineup.
Right. And yeah, Austin Slater can play all three outfield positions, whereas Heston Kjerstad struggled to play left and obviously cannot play center field. So I get it from that perspective. You mentioned he's 2 for 18 since he missed time with that concussion. So maybe the Orioles just want to work a little bit something more out there. It just feels like these guys are the person you date before you find the person you marry. It's the one that's like a trope in romance movies. I'm pretty sure in romantic comedies.
Have you seen that in your experience, Paul?
Let me tell you, I saw Twisters, and there are a couple like that characters like that. I mean, it's just these kind of placeholders, and it's the only thing that I kind of pushed back on was hearing Brandon Hyde say, was asked whether Heston Kjerstad's defense was what was keeping him from being in the big leagues consistently, and he said, no, it's the talent in our outfield. Is Heston Kjerstad more talented than Austin Slater? Absolutely. There's no question about that. And would Brandon Hyde go up there and say, bash Heston Kjerstad's defense? No, I don't expect him to do that. But it is a little disingenuous just from the standpoint of Heston Kjerstad is talented enough to be a big leaguer right now. And you don't fully understand the reason for the Orioles keeping these guys here who probably just don't have a whole lot left in the tank. In Eloy Jimenez and Austin Slater. But anyway, all right, let's get to Trevor Rogers, because he made his Orioles debut yesterday. First off, difficult circumstances. He got there like 3 hours before the game, had never met Adley Rutschman before, is thrown into a difficult situation against one of the best teams in the American League in the Cleveland Guardians. That being said, he struggled. 5 earned runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, 6 hits in 4 1/3 innings on 94 pitches. He was not locating the ball particularly well. A lot of his pitches did not have the kind of movement that, an average major league starter would. He's had a down season this year. There's no question about that. Was traded to the Orioles from Miami with a 4.53 ERA. I said this on the last show, and if you don't want to go back, don't go back, because I don't know what I was saying on that one. I was sleep deprived. I went back and listened, and I didn't fully understand where I was in the moment. That being said, I said it on last week's show, and I stand by it. I think the Trevor Rogers deal was really more about 2025 and 2026 than it was about 2024. He's under team control for those 2 years. And the Orioles have a good track record of quote unquote fixing guys, fixing pitchers, and getting the most out of them when they've struggled with other organizations. But I don't know how much you can fix in the final 2 months of the regular season. You acquired Zach Eflin to be your game 3 starter in a playoff series. And I think the Orioles are going to be fine with throwing Dean Kramer in game 4 or starting the rotation over with Corbin Burns in a game 4 and maybe moving Trevor Rogers to the bullpen. So to me, I'm not trying to read too much into Trevor Rogers' final 2 months of the regular season, because I think the Orioles aren't. I don't think the Orioles are all that concerned. I think they're just saying, don't go out there and blow up. Don't go out there and implode for the final 2 months. Take the offseason in our lab for us to work with you and for you to work on some things. We'll get you right for 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think he, first off, for anybody that is saying that completely writing off the trade as a failure because of 4 1/3 innings.
That's
not the breaks. This is the guy met Adley Rutschman an hour before he started slinging fastballs at him. This is a crazy whirlwind situation for Trevor Rogers. Also, whatever he really does this year is not the end of the world, because he's under team control, and Baltimore needed guys to be part of the rotation for next year and the year beyond, and they really didn't have lefties. Cole Irvin got DFA'd. I guess they figure that Trevor Rogers' future projectability is they can work with more than Cole Irvin at this point. Which, side note, Cole Irvin, great guy. Hopefully he finds a good landing spot. But yeah, I'm not too worried about Trevor Rogers. Yeah, you gave up a lot for him in Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby. But this is a trade that has future implications more so than Thursday night in Cleveland against a phenomenal lineup. The one thing I will say about Trevor Rogers that you'd hope that he avoids in the future is the 2 out. I forget what inning it was. He gave up a three run shot. all with 2 outs. Hit, walk, and then the 3-run homer. Those are the kind of things that drive a pitching coach mental, is when you get the two outs and you can't shut out an inning. And sure, a hit is fine, but kind of close the door. The walk with 2 outs was frustrating, and he has had walk issues. He has some like 5 walks per 9 innings, if I remember correctly. So definitely a work in progress, but Baltimore has time to work with him. And also the trade market, some of the big guys, would it have been cool to get a Blake Snell or Tariq Skubal or Garrett Crochet in this top half of the rotation? Yeah, I mean, that would have been cool, but none of them got moved.
Exactly.
And the price probably was astronomical. So if the price for Trevor Rogers was Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby, that tells you all you need to know about the price of the market.
Yeah. There's really only so much you can do at a certain point. This was not a star-studded trade deadline, and Mike Elias couldn't force the Tigers to make a move for Tariq Skubal. He couldn't force the White Sox to trade Garrett Crochet, and that might not have even helped them in the playoffs anyway because of Crochet's innings limit. I'm glad you mentioned Blake Snell because he was a trade candidate. It would have been such a difficult thing to work out because his contract is so weird where he's got options for 2025. And how do you factor that in? How do you factor in the price tag? It would have been very confusing. And I think there's a lot of reasons that Blake Snell didn't get traded. I have seen, I talked about a few days ago, I have seen the Eloy Jimenez deal characterized as a salary dump. And there was a report from the AP that the Orioles are really only picking up $1,763,441 of Eloy Jimenez's contract. And that includes the $1.5 million of the buyout that they are going to take on themselves. So it's not really a salary dump. They're really only taking on this player for a whole lot. The transfer of ownership, by the way, yesterday, Andy, you reported on it, complete to David Rubenstein and company. And I saw a lot of chatter after the trade deadline that the Orioles, added a bunch of salary at the deadline and previous ownership wouldn't have done it. I think that Orioles fans certainly, are looking for reason to be celebratory because of the new ownership. They're looking for reasons to be optimistic about what this new ownership can do and how they could have an influx of cash to this organization. I just don't want fans to overreact to what they saw at the deadline. You added some salary, sure. Gregory Soto, you added, he's getting $5 million this year, so you're paying him a fraction of that, the prorated amount. He's going to get a raise in arbitration next year if you hold on to him. Sir Anthony Dominguez getting $4.25 million this year. You're paying a fraction of that this year. He's got a club option for next year for $8 million, which you may or may not pick up. You're definitely adding salary for next year, assuming you keep him, in Zach Eflin, $18 million for 2025. That's pretty much the going rate for a pitcher of his caliber. 68 Major League Baseball players this year are getting paid $18 million, and more will get paid $18 million or more next season. And that includes that 68 players includes guys that are with small market teams like Joe Musgrove and Xander Bogaerts in San Diego, Salvador Perez in Kansas City, Carlos Correa in Minnesota. So teams in small markets pay guys $18 million. That's what you would have to pay, probably more if Zach Eflin were to hit free agency. It's a big boy MLB contract. I get that. But it's not like the Orioles are taking on this exorbitant salary for next season. They're also taking money off the books. Corbin Burns, they're paying $15.6 million this year. You're probably not going to re-sign him for next year. That'll be determined in the offseason. You're taking some salary off the books in Austin Hayes after you traded him, and he's going to have another year. We'll get a raise in arbitration. It's a good sign because the Orioles are going to have to pay Adley and Gunnar $18 million before you know it. Gunnar could be a Super 2 player. These guys are going to be commanding a lot of money in arbitration. I just don't want to overreact and say the Orioles are adding all this salary. They're willing to open up their payroll and get guys in here at whatever cost necessary. I do think this ownership group is going to spend more money than the previous one. I just don't know if this trade deadline told me that the Orioles' new ownership group is ready to just start handing out deals left and right. I think that it's still going to be a patient, slow building approach, and that payroll could go up. It should go up in the coming years because of the caliber of players that are coming through this organization. I just don't want fans to necessarily overreact to what they saw at the deadline.
Preach. I got nothing to add to that. Yeah. Nailed it.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Let's talk about another signing that the Orioles made. That would be the first round pick, Vance Honeycutt, hours before the deadline. Got the deal done. It is an overslot deal, $4 million. The projected the slot value of that pick, where they got him at number 22, was $3.8 something million. So it's a little bit more than what the slot value of that pick is. And yet the Orioles were still able to sign all 21 guys. I think that's an important note here, because in previous seasons, the Orioles haven't signed every member of their draft class, either because they've allocated resources to one guy to get an overslot deal, or because of medical things. That's what we heard reported about Nolan McLean a few years ago, the two-way pitcher who came out of Oklahoma State, or I can't remember exactly. Where did Oklahoma State, I thought. Yeah. So they didn't sign him as a third-round pick. But the Orioles yesterday went 21 for 21. They got every single guy in here. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, good job, Matt Blood, in his first draft, under his purview as scouting director. He did a great job identifying talent. Of course, it's he's the head of it, but it's a huge scouting team, and there's many people that go that work together to get these draft picks. Vance Honeycutt at the top of it is a fascinating player. Strikeout rate is really the only dock against him, but even with strikeouts, high OBP. The dude stole 28 bases for UNC as a junior last year, I guess this year, and hit 28 home runs. So he has that 30-30 makeup. Scott Boras called him a 5-tool player. I think Matt Blood echoed that sentiment, that Vance has the potential to be a 5-tool guy. You're looking at somebody, if everything projects and develops correctly, could be a long-term center fielder in the major leagues. And, it's interesting because you also have Enrique Bradfield, who is, was first-round pick last year, 2023, out of Vanderbilt, also center field, also incredibly fast, also great defensively. I think Vance has a higher offensive upside than Enrique Bradfield, but it will be interesting to see how the two develop. So many things can happen in the minor leagues. So how do they develop? Where do the Orioles kind of think they fit in the long-term plan? I imagine one or both will be involved in trade discussions in the future. Who knows if Baltimore want to even get rid of either of them, but there would be probably highly coveted players around the league, as in trade talks. So there's a long time between now and when they arrive in the major leagues. But for Vance Honeycutt in particular, seems like he can do it all. And we'll see. We'll see how the strikeouts, translate to the professional game. Players are better in the pros at, obviously that was the understatement of the year. But they're better at commanding the baseball, and their spin is crazy, and they're just batting. He was in a very he led UNC to College World Series appearance. As one of 8 teams to make Omaha. It was great season. He was a star. So he's faced high level pitching, and he did great on in the tournament. So we know he can face high level pitching. The O's know it. It'll just be interesting to see how much of a dock is it if he does continue to strike out about a quarter of a time. The good thing for him is that he still gets on base a lot. He still hits for a lot of power and average. So even though he's striking out a quarter of the time, that's fine when you're producing, like he had 1,000+ OPS as a junior in college. So
Yeah.
if you're producing at, and I don't expect it to have 1,000 OPS in the minors, but if you're producing at that high of a level at a certain point, and especially in how baseball is treated this way in this day and age, you're way more willing to accept strikeouts when a guy is producing as well as he is in other at bats. So I'm not too worried about it. We'll see. Long way to go.
Yeah, a long way to go for him, both him and Bradfield. The Orioles probably could use another outfielder for next year after they traded Kyle Stowers, because probably assume you slot in Heston Kjerstad, Anthony Santander's hitting free agency. Cedric Mullins has one more year under contract. Colby
Yeah,
Kauser will be back for sure.
I was thinking this Honeycutt addition probably helps the palette a little bit, getting rid of Kyle Stowers, and if Santander is not re-signed in free agency, which that's a discussion for another day.
Sure.
But phenomenal season, hit his 32nd home run last night. A great player. Is going to command a lot of money no matter where he ends up, be it Baltimore or another organization. Also, how cool was it for him to hit a gigantic home run like that at Guaranteed Rate Field in Cleveland, the organization that he never debuted? He was in their organization. He signed with them as a international free agent. Had some injury concerns in their minor league system. Never cut it. Was a Rule 5 pickup by Baltimore, and then he gets to go back to Cleveland as a star, and he just hits a monster shot. So I just imagine personally that must have been pretty cool for him to have that moment. I know it was cool watching it. But now I said it would be another day, and now I'm talking about it. So
we'll save that for another day. But it is because I think for years we've assumed that the Orioles are just going to let Anthony Santander walk in free agency because of all the outfield talent coming up through their system. And then he turns into an all-star this year. And he's been productive. He's had productive seasons, but not quite like this. And Mike Elias said on the Masson broadcast, he's the heart and soul of that lineup right now. And he's right. I mean, continues to mash from both sides of the plate. He's going to get a lot of money in free agency. These kind of switch hitting power hitters who can play in the corner outfield, you don't have to DH. They're hard to find. They're hard to get. Like, you think of like Josh Bell, if he were a better defender and could play in the outfield. Like, Josh Bell's made a lot of money over the course of his career. So he's going to get money from somebody. And you could make a solid case that the Orioles should do what they can to bring him back. But it is also, I'm glad you brought up Honeycutt and Bradfield together, because they both do a lot of similar things. And certainly the strikeouts are a concern for Honeycutt, but his hitting profile is just worlds above Enrique Bradfield Jr.'s right now at this point in their development. That doesn't mean that Bradfield won't become a good hitter over the course of his career, and he's done enough through the minor leagues to get promoted. But you take that strikeout rate if it comes with the kind of power and the kind of hard hitting that he has produced at UNC. If he can translate that to the minors and to his pro career while still playing great defense, while still stealing 30 bags a year or more, that is an incredibly valuable player. And it brings me back to my question off the top, which was, if that Jordan Westburg injury happens a few days before, would the Orioles have traded Connor Norby, or would they maybe have said, you know what, Miami, how about a guy named Enrique Bradfield Jr. instead of Connor Norby? Because we need that infield help right now. And we just drafted a guy with the 22nd overall pick and Vance Honeycutt that we think could be a big league piece before you know it. I think he's going to be a quick riser, Honeycutt. And I think that, not 2025, I don't think by any stretch, but I think these guys are on their way.
Yeah, let's cool it on the promotion watch. I need a weekend off.
Let's cool it on all news. Please, let's just put in a pause on everything, because I have not gotten the kind of sleep that is contributing to my mental health right now.
Why don't you we'll hang up this and go play some college football 25 and throw some interceptions.
Perfect. I go do that. I'll go head to Ravens practice and talk with Jonah Schaefer on the Banner Ravens podcast. By the way, like, rate, review, subscribe. Write us a good review here on the Banner Baseball Show. If you write us a 5-star review, I will read it out on Apple Podcasts. Go do it right now, and I will read it out here on the show next time. Thanks so much for tuning in. At AF Kostka is Andy's Twitter handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. And Danielle Allen Tuck is out in Cleveland getting you covered on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe. Just $1 for 6 months. I don't think anybody had better trade deadline coverage than you, Danielle, Kyle Goon, John Mioli. Every single base was being covered on the craziest week of the season for the Orioles. It was a blast. It was exhausting, but it was so fun to be able to cover all that stuff. And I think the Banner has done a terrific job to toot our own horn in the kind of coverage that we've produced for the Baltimore Orioles.
I was going to say a little biased. I think Jeff Passan for ESPN might have had better coverage, but we'll take a second place.
Or Craig Mish, who's like the Marlins reporter who reported like 18 trades this week.
Perhaps that guy, I don't know how he did it.
He's goated.
Broke everything for the Marlins, and he had there were so many trades. I mean, geez, man, he must have had 5 cell phones going. I hope that guy. I hope that guy got a nice dinner and a cold beer. That's what I hope.
That's the reward for having to cover an absolutely terrible team. Is that we get to cover a good one, and they play game 2 of their series against the Cleveland Guardians tonight. I'm pretty sure I just said at the top it was a 3-game series. I think it's a 4-game series in Cleveland. Carlos Carrasco is going for Cleveland tonight, and for the Orioles, it'll be Dean Kramer. So Danielle has you covered there. For Andy Kostka, I'm Paul Mancano. Thanks.